Hey, how you doing today? It's David Duford from Buy Life Insurance for Burial, where I help people like you find affordable, high-quality burial insurance. In today's presentation, I'm specifically going to answer the question, what does burial insurance cover? A lot of people ask me, how do your burial insurance plans work? How do other burial insurance plans work? And how can I figure out which of those plans is the best suited for me and what I want to accomplish regarding my burial insurance needs. So that's what I'm seeking to do to answer in this particular video. So let's get started. So what we're going to start with first today is an overview of what to expect. First, I'm going to formally introduce myself to you and my company if you haven't yet become familiar with my training and educational videos. I'm going to answer right away what the definition of a burial life insurance policy is, and then contrast and compare that to what the definition of a pre-need funeral policy. These are two policies that are the most popular to fund a final expense type of funeral plan. So we'll delve more into that later. We're also going to go into an average breakdown on costs and items and pricing for a burial and a cremation as well, because it's important to understand what components go in to the average cost for a burial or cremation, and really to make your determinations on how much coverage you need and what needs to be covered based on those facts. Then we're going to talk about the cost of burial insurance, the policy itself, what the cost of those are, as well as the cost of pre-need insurance. One thing I'll mention too, before I get ahead of myself, is we're going to talk about the pros of each policy, as well as the drawbacks of each policy earlier on in the presentation as well, so that you can better understand how these plans work and really who it's better for. One plan is better for, and whereas another is better for somebody else. You can better understand and select which option is best for you. Then I'm going to give you my thoughts on what I think are the right plans under certain circumstances, and to give you the final steps to move forward if finding a policy is something that you want to do. So my name is David Duford. I am the owner, operator, and founder of BuyLifeInsuranceForBurial.com. I've been licensed as a life insurance agent since 2011. And in my short time in the business, I've helped over 3,000 families with their life insurance needs from all walks of life. In addition to helping people with life insurance, I'm also a published author of 2 books. The one in particular that would probably most interest you is over here in the lower left-hand corner. It's called The Official Guide to Buying Final Expense Life Insurance. It's a short, consumer-oriented guide to show you the options for burial life insurance and to help you select the best plan for your goals. Also, I am a life insurance agency owner. I work with insurance agents nationally who want to sell burial insurance in their own communities. So I not only help people like you for a living, but I train others to do the same as well. And last but not least, I am married, have been since 2008, and number 4 child is on the way. So cross your fingers. Any day now, the baby's coming. So let's talk about what the definition of a burial life insurance policy is. So real quick. Best way to describe what burial insurance is that it's life insurance. Okay, so you've probably seen all sorts of ads for burial insurance, final expense insurance, maybe something else, guaranteed acceptance insurance. It's all burial insurance, which is all life insurance. So just like life insurance, burial insurance is designed to pay whatever beneficiary you designated a specific death benefit upon your passing. So if you indicate that it is somebody that you love, like a spouse, a child, a grandchild, a brother or sister, a family member, or even something like a funeral home, or maybe a church or some charitable organization. The job of the insurance company is simply to cut a check for the amount of coverage that you have and pay that beneficiary. That's it. That's the extent of the relationship. The most common life insurance types that fund a burial type plan include whole life, term life, and universal life. I'm not going to get into too deep of a conversation here. I'll leave some links to better describe how these types of plans work, but I'm going to give you the 30,000 foot view and just a basic explanation. So whole life insurance, the pros of whole life are that the rates never go up, the coverage never cancels, and in many circumstances, not all, but many circumstances, you can be fully protected from the first day as long as your health qualifies. So it's guaranteed coverage. It doesn't go away because you get too old. You just pay the premium, you have coverage. Drawbacks, it tends to be pricier when compared to other plans, but still a lot of people buy it because, and it is the first choice for burial insurance because of the peace of mind that, hey, you have a policy you cannot outlive, and the nature of death is we don't know when we're going to die. So why not get a plan like this that doesn't go away prior? Because term insurance is the other option. Term insurance terminates at the future date. There are plans out there, you may have seen them in the mail. They're very affordable. That's one of the biggest pros with term insurance. But the drawbacks are, what if you outlive it? Because term terminates. You may pay all this money for nothing. Think about going through life paying car insurance and never having a wreck. You spend an awful lot of money, and certainly it was useful. And you stop paying for car insurance when you die. But the problem with term insurance is you may stop paying for term insurance and still be alive and can't keep the coverage you had. So you may outlive it and not ever have the benefit from it, even if you do live a long life. So term insurance, while cheaper in many regards, has a long-term risk of being outlived and not being effective like you'd like it to be. Universal life is kind of like, at least the ones I represent. I do what's called no-lapse universal life plans. They tend to be a little more competitive than whole life insurance. They're harder to qualify for based off of health, but you can get a substantial more amount of life insurance death benefit coverage with the same benefits of a whole life plan, that as long as you pay the described premium, that the policy can never lapse, you can never outlive it, which is unlike a lot of the old universal life plans that actually are lapsing left and right now, that were wrote back in the 80s because agents just incorrectly designed the products, and a lot of people are just steaming mad. So these are just a quick rundown of how these plans work. Reference the links I have below just to give you a more in-depth education on how these plans work. So let's talk about the pros and cons of burial insurance. So when I'm saying burial insurance, I'm talking about a whole life final expense burial insurance plan that its design is to never be outlived, to never have price increases, and as long as your health qualifies, fully covers you. We could use term insurance or universal life as well, but they kind of all fulfill the same benefits here as we compare it, because this real comparison here is really designed to compare it to funeral pre-need insurance, as we'll get to in a moment. So with burial insurance, traditionally the underwriting is much more flexible. Most burial insurance products are what's called simplified issue or non-med. So there's no examination required. You simply submit your application. You give permission to check health history records to ensure that you can qualify for the product that you do. You may have to do a phone interview with the insurance company, but beyond that, there's no examinations, blood drawn, urinalysis, physicals done 95% of the time. So it's simple to complete. It doesn't take a lot of investment on your behalf. If you don't like needles, no worries. You don't have to submit yourself to them. So a lot of people like the convenience of those kinds of plans. And when compared to pre-need insurances, we'll get to in a moment, this is the least cost for the most coverage typically. So if you're price conscious and you're looking for a plan that is going to fit your fixed income a bit more, typically a burial insurance plan is the sensible route to go to keep the payments as low as possible, but allow you to get the most coverage as possible as well. And lastly, with the pros, you control the beneficiary. Again, you decide who you want the beneficiary to be. It's your decision. You have complete autonomy and authority who you want to get the money when you die, and you can express that will inside the policy. And the cons of a burial insurance policy, really the biggest con that I think, and I gave this some serious thought because I think burial insurance is a great product for a lot of people. The biggest con with burial insurance is typically what you're going to see are lifetime payment plans. Simply put, the biggest drawback is if you buy a burial insurance plan and you plan on living a long time, and you actually do, you got to keep up with that insurance the rest of your life until you do die. Because if you let it go beforehand, many times you lose the coverage. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes we can get you what's called paid up life insurance plans. It's in select scenarios only, and it's designed to be like paying off a car. You still drive the car after you get done paying off your loan. Same thing with a life insurance or burial insurance plan. You pay it off 5 or 10 years, you keep the coverage, and you don't have to pay premiums anymore. So if that's of interest to you, that is something we can do. It tends to be a little more expensive. And as we'll get to, it's very similar to the options you're going to see for pre-need, but actually it's a better price. So keep that in mind if that does interest you, because pre-need policies are a little bit different from a burial insurance plan. They're life insurance too. but they're almost exclusively sold through the funeral home locally where you live. And the idea behind them is that they're paid up plans. So you're going to pay either in one lump sum and then get a multiple of that sum. You may pay $6,000 for a $10,000 funeral if you're young and healthy enough. Otherwise, you pay over a year, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 years, no matter whatever the amount of time is. You pick the period of time that makes sense, and you pay on it for that length of time. I generally see people paying for 7 to 10 years, although I'm sure there are people who just elect to just pay it off and get it done with. One big advantage of a pre-need plan is very much like a whole life plan for burial insurance. It's fixed premiums. You continue to pay the premium. It's fixed for the length of time required in the pre-need contract. The underwriting is simplified, no exams either in this process. And one of the biggest advantages with the pre-need plan is that the funeral home says, hey, you take this policy out with me in exchange for getting you insured, I'm going to actually lock in the prices on the funeral. So that what will happen, Mr. Prospect, is that you see the prices today, we're going to lock that in as a benefit to you for purchasing through us. So a lot of people like that, and that's one of the biggest pros, is that if you've lived long enough, you've seen prices go up for virtually everything: gas, food, rent, electricity. Pre-need or funeral expenses, no different. In fact, in a minute, I'm going to show you a chart from the National Funeral Directors Association that actually shows you the price increase over the last 10 years. It's pretty big, and it continues to grow at a pretty high inflationary rate. So that's a big attractive element for pre-need policy, because in exchange for buying, you get locked-in rates. Additionally, there's simplified underwriting with pre-need plans, so like burial insurance, there's no examination required, and you can pay it up fast if you really want to. Again, the big advantage is you don't have a lifetime payment. You can pay it in one swoop. You can pay it over a couple of years or longer. Very customizable, with the long-term advantage of not being stuck with a payment till you die. The other thing I'll mention with these plans is that if you die before the plan's in effect or paid off, it acts as insurance and pays the remainder off, only if you're outside of a 2-year waiting period. A lot of these plans, depending on the underwriting, as we'll get to in a moment, don't always fully cover from the first day. The funeral home is the beneficiary on these policies, so you know that the funeral home will be paid if you pass away. If you, let's say you live half of the time in Florida, half of the time in Michigan, or half the time in Arizona, half the time in Washington State, and you're a snowbird, I guess you could say, these policies are portable. So as long as the funeral home is a part of the organization, which most of them are, that are representative with the insurance, they can use that policy at that funeral home. So they're added convenience for the lifestyle of many people who are retired. So let's talk about the cons. So one of the biggest cons with pre-need is the amount of money that you pay for this price lock protection. Later on, I'm going to break down the costs of what it runs for a typical multi-year payment pre-need plan. I'm going to show you that as much as it sounds good to lock in your prices, look, there's always pros and cons and give and take. And you're going to see exactly what I'm saying, that you're going to pay a lot for that option to lock in inflation. And then you'll have to ask yourself, is it really worth it? The one thing I don't like about pre-need plans that I've seen, especially with people with a variety of health issues, or even one or two, is that there's not a lot of flexibility with pre-need plans for health conditions. I have seen people who have had simple issues like depression, which affects 1 out of 4 people today, or even just basic diabetes. Those conditions caused a what's called a waiting period before the burial pre-need plan was in full effect. So that meant if the person died within the first 2 years, they wouldn't be fully covered for the death benefit of the burial insurance plan. So silly stuff like this, these are conditions for sure, but they're so common and they're not super serious that it's silly to me that they would count so negatively towards the policy in force. That's one of the biggest weaknesses I've seen with these particular kind of plans. And the other one is that there's no control over beneficiaries. If you have a desire to leave money or a legacy or to replace your income with your spouse, to your spouse when you pass away, too bad. The funeral home is the beneficiary, and they're the ones that control all the aspects of the death benefit you leave behind. So if you're looking for anything above and beyond paying the funeral, unfortunately, this plan's not going to accomplish that. They must be the funeral home. The funeral home must be the beneficiary. So let's talk about the average burial cost and item cost on the National Funeral Directors Association. In just a moment, I'm going to take you to a website where we actually look at a breakdown of cost, compare it over the last decade. It'll be very informative to you to show you the differences. And also an item-by-item breakdown, so you can see what actually goes into a funeral, what the average costs are, and just give you an idea of what this is going to run. So give me a moment to put you over on that webpage, and I'll show you exactly how things work. Okay, so what you're viewing here is the nfda.org website, the National Funeral Directors Association. Specifically, we're on the page of statistics for pricing, and I'm going to scroll down and get past this general information on funeral services. This just shows that there's been a loss of approximately 2,000 funeral homes since 2004. Pretty interesting. With more people now than ever, there's less funeral homes ever. It's kind of interesting. Anyways, this is just financial information. Let's talk about costs. So this is a median cost of a funeral with a viewing and a burial. And this is first comparison here is from 2014 to 2017. And what you're going to see here are just the different types of fees and items associated with the expense. And on the right here, you're going to see 2014 costs. This is incorrect here. They didn't update this correctly. 2014 costs to 2017 costs. And again, this is an average cost based on their own computation methods for each of these items. So over a 3-year period. So you can see there's, and I'll let you review this at your own pace. You can always go back and rewatch it. Embalming, prep for the body, removal transfer fees, use of facilities, hearse costs, service vans. You can kind of see everything's trickled up a little bit. Metal casket. And this is the average cost without a vault. Most people do get a vault. So you can see that the average cost over the last 3 years has gone up $250 somewhat. And down here is the average cost for a cremation. Same items. I'll let you view this at your own pace. I'll also include a link to this page in the video below so you can do this on your own pace. And you can see that the cremation cost has gone up from $6,078 to $6,260. I'll just be frank with you. This is my opinion interjected. This cost for cremation seems a little bit not off, if you ask me. I've seen cremations more in the $3,000 to $4,000 range. Even in big cities, even less if you just get a direct cremation without all the pomp and circumstance. A lot of people who get cremated don't want a large amount of money spent, like on a burial. And the suggestion that there's only about a $2,000 difference between a cremation, $2,500, and a burial seems rather ridiculous. So that's just my opinion. Take it for what it is. I've seen cremations a lot less. I've seen burials a lot more. But the reason I'm putting this up here is just to show you the difference that prices have gone up. Unfortunately, the NFDA took down the 10-year comparison. The prices went up about 20 to 25% between 2004 and 2014, which is enormously high. And this is just a little add-on here about showing you how more people now than ever are getting cremated. They're literally saying 71% of the population in the next 12 years since filming this will be cremated versus 22% buried. That's an incredible shift. But it tells you the difference in how people look at cremation, which has historically been something, scandalous, even in some religious areas, but not so much anymore. So now that you know what items and average costs are associated with either a burial or a cremation, I want to actually break down the different kinds of insurance options, whether it's pre-need or whether it's a burial insurance plan, and just try to drive the point home that you really need to be concerned with the costs of both. Now, I'm a life insurance agent. For full transparency, I sell burial insurance plans. Most people who work with me want these kinds of plans, but it's not always the case that a burial insurance plan is appropriate for you. So what I want to do in these educational videos is give you both sides of the story so that you can better decide which of the plans makes more sense for your circumstances. So let's talk about the cost breakdown of a pre-need insurance plan. So most of the time, there's generally a higher upfront cost for pre-need insurance than burial insurance plans. And that's easy because if you pay a lump sum plan, or you pay over the course of 2 or 3 years, you're going to pay several $1,000s in over a short period of time, especially if it's a 1-year plan or a lump sum plan. So that's compared to, plans that are usually less than $100, even less than $50 a month for a burial insurance plan. So there's a big difference in cost. And of course, this depends on your health and age. If your health's not great, you probably have a higher price and a waiting period as well, of course, if you're older too. What I have commonly seen when I've interviewed my clients that have taken out pre-need plans, what I have seen that they have average monthly payments for a funeral burial plan right around $8,000 or $9,000 is the common price I've seen. And depending on the length of time they pay and what items are included, it's a pretty wide range here. But somewhere between $100 to $250 a month are common for full funeral services. I've seen a lady, I remember back in 2012, she was paying $250 a month for a mortuary or above ground burial, and mausoleum, excuse me. And that was $5,000 price tag. Her cremation or her burial expense was $10,000, and the pre-need plan was charging her $250 a month. So, and she was paying that thing over 10 years, and it was putting a huge strain on her. So I've seen these prices be that high, and they certainly can be. The thing is, you pay over and above the going cost of a funeral for a pre-need plan when paying over 7 to 10 years. So what happens is, a lot of people see the high pricing that's required to pay over the course of, say, lump sum, 1, 2, 3 to 5 year payment plan. So they opt for a 7 to 10 year payout plan to lower the premiums to keep it somewhat reasonable, but to give them the coverage I think is important. The problem is a lot of people just don't quite do the math, because what you're paying for here, again, the biggest benefit is you're locking your prices in with a pre-need plan so that you don't have inflated prices upon burial. The problem is there's no such thing as a free lunch, and many times you pay dearly for the perceived benefit of a price lock. So let me give you a financial case study. I had a client who was paying $150 a month at one point, and he had a 10-year plan where his job was to pay $150 a month to have his $10,000 funeral totally paid off in 10 years. So now if you do the math with me, that's $150 a month. For 12 months, that's $1,800 a year, right? 150 times 12. And then multiply that by 10 years, and you're arriving at $18,000 of premiums paid in for a $10,000 funeral benefit. So you have to ask the question, is it really worth paying nearly double in premiums for a funeral that costs half as much? $18,000 for a $10,000 funeral. Imagine if you went out and bought a car. The sticker price said $20,000. And you put together a package where you got it on a monthly basis for 5 years. And when you looked at the interest and total payments paid in, you would have paid in $35,000 or even $40,000. Is it really worth paying $15,000 in interest in this case for a $20,000 car? For example, if at the funeral, is it worth paying an extra $8,000 for a $10,000 benefit? Seems rather high for the potential for large levels of inflation, which are happening, but I don't necessarily believe are justifiable for the age that many people take this out and the likelihood of the length of time they'll live. So again, this is something you've got to consider. Are you willing to pay this kind of price for the perceived benefit of locking prices in? Again, because it's insurance, and these companies know how to win either way. This is coming from an insurance man, if you will. So something to think about. Maybe right for you, may not be. Let's look at the cost of burial insurance and kind of dissect that a little bit. So burial insurance premiums are typically lower than pre-need. If you take a $10,000 benefit for the same person that's paying $150 a month, he's probably going to pay about $50 a month, assuming it's an apples-to-apples comparison. The health is the same, the age is the same, circumstances are the same. They're going to pay a significantly less amount for the same thing. Now, what I've seen, again, for a designated plan for a cremation or burial, you're looking somewhere between $30 to $70 a month to entirely fund the burial insurance plan. Okay, so a lot less expensive than $100 to $250. Now, the benefit of a burial insurance plan is it's optional to spend more than that for additional coverage for other reasons. So if you wanted to have, income replacement. If you wanted to get $10,000 for the burial and then $15,000 for your spouse, you can do that in a burial insurance plan. You can take 10 from that plan when the insured dies, and then she can keep the rest, for example, or he. You get the idea. There's some advantages to that setup. Now the downside, because there's always a downside to everything, pros and cons. The cons to the burial insurance plan is that you'll pay a lot of money over the long run. Let me give you a case study. Let's say I got a 60-year-old man. Instead of paying $150 a month with the Preneed plan, he opts for the burial insurance plan. He's been quoted and is approved for $50 a month for a $10,000 full coverage plan. He lives another 30 years, long lasting life, and dies at 90. He's paid 30 years in. How much money has he paid in? Well, in this case, you take $50 a month, multiply it by 12, that gives you $600, and then you multiply it by 30, and here we are again at $18,000 in total payments. So again, was this worth it? He paid $18,000 for a $10,000 benefit. The thing is that, let me give you my thoughts on this, because there's not necessarily a clear-cut, one-size-fits-all answer to this concern, because it's a concern. On one hand, I could go with Preneed plans. Yeah, if I pay over 10 years, I'll pay $8,000 extra into a $10,000 benefit, but I pay it off. The alternative being I get a burial insurance plan, really significantly lower my price for the same thing, or get a lot more coverage for the same price as a Preneed plan, but if I live another 30 years, I'm paying a lot more into it than the value of the plan. How can I figure out what works best? So let me kind of give you my thoughts on this. So in my experience, people looking for coverage for any kind of final expense type coverage fall into two camps. And let's assume here, the main goal here is to get a plan that covers for burial. Number one, you've got the price-conscious group. The price-conscious group of people is just concerned about price. They want to make it affordable. They're on a very fixed income. And when looking at two different options, one's $150, one's $50, sure, there's some advantages and disadvantages with both. They'll pick the lower price one because it's got to fit their budget. If they push too much, they don't want to pay on it and drop it in a year or two and have nothing to show and waste all that money. The second type of person usually is a little bit better off. They appreciate value and they like peace of mind, certainly as we all do, but they don't want to pay forever on something. They just hate payments. They just want to get it done with, get it over with. And they're going to be payment conscious, and therefore the idea of a Preneed plan is more attractive. You get it done in 2 or 3 years and be done. And at those rates, it's actually a pretty good deal. Hey, you may pay $300-400 a month in for a while, for 2 years or whatever it is, but at least it's over with and assured it's protected without price inflation. And then the other part of this in the process is your personal goals for coverage dictate the right kind of plan to pick. So you're either price conscious or payment conscious, but you also need to be conscious of what do you want to accomplish with a life insurance plan. I had a plan approved on a client who wanted to cover for a cremation, but then leave the rest as an income supplement to the surviving spouse. One of them had a pension plan through her job that she retired from. The other worked small business and made very small Social Security. When she dies, he doesn't inherit that pension. So his life is turned upside down. Financially, he's got to come up with how to live without all that extra money she provides in retirement. So an income replacement plan is great for that because a burial insurance plan is great for that because you could get $50,000 in coverage or somewhere around there, less or more, and use a portion of that for the final expenses and the rest as an income replacement. So if you have goals like that, it begins to be potentially more reasonable to look at a burial insurance plan than just a Preneed plan. So again, these are the ideas: replace a spouse's income, leave a small legacy to a loved one. Hey, you may just not want the funeral home to be in control of your insurance money. That may be reason enough not to want to do a Preneed policy. And again, what I've experienced in working with people over the years is that those people that have multiple goals associated with life insurance, kind of like what's mentioned above, end up going with a burial insurance plan because they can still pay for the burial, but then accomplish those other goals all within the same plan. And those that just don't care, maybe they don't have as many goals, but they just don't want the burden of the funeral on any level left to a loved one, and they trust the funeral home they're working with, and they like the idea of paying off quickly, even if it's a high price, they'll go with the Preneed plan because it allows them to just get it over with. They don't really care about a life insurance plan and their other benefits because it just doesn't fit their needs. So that is the wrap up here. Maybe I hope I answered some questions for you on how and what burial insurance covers, and defining your options for burial insurance and which circumstances you'll find one product is better than another. And where I stand at this point with you is this. If you're interested in a pre-need plan, my recommendation is to call the funeral home locally that you trust to arrange a plan to be put together. Pre-need plans are primarily sold through a funeral home because you're tying in the costs of those items in the funeral. You'll need to talk to them to see what the costs are and what they would recommend. So it's like you're walking through a showroom and here I want that casket and these flowers and this service, and you get it all written down in a contract, and then you take the policy out to insure it. So it's very commonly sold through the funeral home. But if you're the type that feels a burial insurance plan is a better deal based on what you've learned, I can help you with that. Doesn't matter where you live. I can help you, as long as you live in the U.S., I can help you find a plan. I actually am a broker. I shop around to find the best price and coverage for my clients. I work with multiple companies, so even with health issues, it's very common for me to be able to find quality life insurance coverage that will cover you. So if you'd like to contact me and let me help you out, there's a couple things you can do. You can call me at the number below, 888-626-0439. I encourage you to leave a voicemail if you don't get me instantly. I do talk to a lot of people all day long, and I will call you back typically within the next 24 business hours. Or you can go to my website, send me a message at buylifeinsuranceforburial.com, either by the contact box at the top, or there's a little pop-up box below. You can just shoot me a message and request a quote for free. Best way to do it is to call me, I will say, because usually what happens if someone messages me, I got to ask health questions anyway. And the process is very small. It takes 5 or 10 minutes. No obligation whatsoever. Just to show you what you qualify for. If I can help you, great. If not, that's not a problem either. And then you can decide based on what I show you if it's something that makes sense for you. If you like this video, please leave a comment below. And if you haven't already and like these kind of videos, subscribe too, because I do a lot of videos like this every single week. Again, my name is David Duford at buylifeinsuranceforburial.com, where I help people like you with burial insurance. Number is 888-626-0439. Hope to talk to you soon. Take care.